Happy Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Morning JOX. Conrad, Van, Order, Damian Mitchell here with you until 7 o'clock. Keeping you up to date on anything you might have missed in the world of sports overnight. And it was a big day yesterday. We've got a lot to get to today, a lot to get to this morning. And, of course, it's going to be a big day tonight as well, as we roll along, because tonight is the first unveiling of the new college football playoff rankings. So we always know, right, it's going to come at the beginning of November, and we always talk about, well, why do we even do rankings at the beginning of the year? Because they're kind of pointless, and we don't know anything about these teams. And, you know, the rankings that come out tonight, I guess, technically still don't mean anything, right, because we've got a number of games left to go before all is said and decided when it comes to the college football playoff field. But it gives us a good indication of where teams are. And most importantly, Damian, it lets us know, what does this committee view as the most important factors? And that's something that's been hotly debated over the last couple of years. So maybe this year, right? Because they said before the season that strength of schedule was going to factor in more so this year than it has in years past. And I guess we will see if that is true tonight.
Biggest thing is, are we going to get some transparency? Are
No.
we going? That's the
No,
biggest
we're not.
question. Are we going to get some sort of explanation of why teams are where they are, what the committee actually values, and then we can kind of assess from there. Now, this past weekend kind of throws a wrench into a lot of things. Debate. I mean, when you look at where a lot of teams were, AP poll wise, and coaches poll, well, now we got to see what the committee thinks about certain things, because we saw Miami fall. We saw, it's crazy enough, we saw Vanderbilt fall, who was a top 10 team just over this past weekend. So I'm interested to see how many SEC teams right now do you think would possibly be in the college football playoffs? If you had to put the teams in, how many do you think the SEC would have right now?
I would go 5.
You'd go Texas A&M.
I'd go Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and I mean, I'll be honest with you right now, like I think you could make a strong argument to put Texas back in the college football playoff.
That win against Vanderbilt helps.
It certainly does. And there's some interesting things with that, but we can get into that a little bit later, because there are some things that will be very telling tonight based on what the committee does compared to, like Damian brought up, what the AP and the coaches poll did on Sunday. So, but we have time to get into that because we did want to start off today and get into everything you may have missed yesterday down on the plains of Auburn, because we were able to carry John Cohen's portion of it on 3-man front, but then I know Paul carried part of DJ Durkin's press conference. But yesterday, a little bit of a shakeup, right? Because Hugh Freeze, after he was fired, typically at 1:30 on Mondays is when he does his press conference, kind of previewing the upcoming opponent, talking to the media. But yesterday, you got John Cohen, who spent some time answering questions about the coaching search, and he started everything off and kind of had his own press conference. And then following that, you got DJ Durkin, the interim head coach, doing a more traditional coach's press conference that we normally got from Hugh Freeze on Monday afternoons. But I think John Cohen, a lot of what he had to say is probably going to be the main takeaways for a lot of people, just because, right, this is the first time we've heard someone openly discussing the search for a new head coach at Auburn and what he might be looking for in a candidate and things of that nature. So let's start you off with this. This is John Cohen. We'll play you some audio from yesterday. And this is John Cohen talking about some of the characteristics that he is going to look for in that new coach and whoever that is that he hires.
The characteristics, somebody with an edge, somebody who's highly competitive. You know, in my career, I found that one of two things has to happen. The head coach of almost any sport either has to have a tremendous edge to them, or they have to be surrounded by assistants who have an edge to them. There's many different ways to define that, but you can call it blue collar, you can call it hard nosed, you can call it aggressive, you can call it all those things. But that's usually priority number one is to find that part. Then intelligence, strategic, forward thinking. I mean, all those things matter. And at this level of college football, you're obviously going to have somebody who has a track record in all these areas, and you're going to look into that track record with the utmost seriousness. And you're looking for somebody who can lead a building, lead a staff, lead 18 to 22, 23, 24-year-olds into battle to compete in the best league in the country.
And I do know that John Cohen, he was also asked, I guess, kind of to expand on that, or kind of a similar question later on, which was, how important is it that the next coach has a track record of not only scouting but developing quarterback talent? And John Cohen said that was something that was certainly very important, because we know it's been a big criticism of Auburn coaches, let's be honest, for a while now. And that is, you need good quarterback play in the SEC. That it is what it is. So that's John Cohen talking about some of the characteristics he would look for in a new coach. Well, somebody that we've heard, we had a bunch of people texting and calling in asking about it yesterday. I know a lot of people out there are probably thinking it, and that is, well, DJ Durkin, is that somebody that, hey, let's say you do beat Vanderbilt this weekend, right? What happens if you beat Alabama at the end of the year? Is DJ Durkin somebody that, if the players have rallied around him and the results are speaking for themselves on the field, is that somebody that could ultimately be a candidate for the head coaching job when all is said and done? Well, John Cohen was asked that very question yesterday. This is what he said about DJ Durkin and if he could be a legitimate candidate to take over long term.
Yeah, I think DJ has done an incredible job with our defense. And when you're at practice, when you watch him coach in game, it's pretty evident that he does have an edge. He's somebody with incredible energy. He's somebody that the players, student athletes relate to. He's somebody who has strategic vision. Will he get consideration? Absolutely, he will get consideration. But I won't go any farther than that. I mean, I think DJ is definitely somebody who has earned that opportunity, but he will be part of a pool that we will consider.
So there you go. Did John Cohen making it sound like DJ Durkin will be considered for the opening? And again, it sounds like if he goes out there and does a good job and the players respond to him and rally around him, that's somebody that maybe that will be the next head coach of Auburn football. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I mean, that's, whether you take that for what it is or you look at that as a courtesy, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But John Cohen saying that DJ Durkin would be considered a candidate for the position. Another big question with Auburn is who is going to make the hire? Because I think at this point, look, if you don't know this already, I think most of you out there do, right? There's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes there for a lot of programs, and Auburn's no exception to that. Auburn has a lot of cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, when it comes to making certain decisions, and that's gotten in the way of them making hires in the past. And so I think a lot of people yesterday were wondering, well, is this going to be John Cohen's hire? Is this going to be, I guess, influential boosters? Are they going to ultimately have the say-so? But who's going to be calling the shots on this coaching search? Is it going to be John Cohen? And just listen to what the AD had to say about that.
There is no question that I will take information from industry experts. I will take information from people who really understand college football at a high level. And we will go to people who have incredible data, and we will go to people who really understand all four corners of the country in this great sport. But I am the committee. And even though I will listen and I will do as good a job as I possibly can of taking in information, I will be the committee.
I will say I thought of everything that he said yesterday. Again, take it with a grain of salt in terms of if you truly believe that or not. But in terms of a statement in a press conference, I think that was the highlight for me yesterday from John Cohen of I am the committee. I am the one that will be making the decision. Okay, if you say so, but it sounded good at the very least. And
yeah,
we'll see.
And again, he's kind of one of those. You've seen the government kind of get involved with certain athletic directors and how things have gone, and at least you know that he's going to be the one that has the final say so, and he didn't make no bones about it. He said, "I am the committee." I respect it. I respect it. Shout out to John Cohen.
It was a good line. It was certainly a good line. All right, so that's enough from John Cohen. That was again the Auburn athletics director. He kind of opened things up yesterday, talking about the coaching search and his vision for the Auburn football program. Now let's hear from the new head coach real quick, the interim head coach DJ Durkin. Again, he did his press conference following John Cohen, and this was him just kind of his message to the Auburn fans, the Auburn family, with the firing of Hugh Freeze, him taking over the final stretch of the season in front of him. This is his message to the fan base.
Our fan base is incredible. The support we get every home game here, whatever the situation, whatever's going on, whatever the weather, whatever the time of the game, whatever, they're there, that Tiger Walk, that's the most amazing experience you could have in this game. And so, first off, thank you for your support. And I just want them to know that we are going to do everything possible to represent them and this great university in a way that they can be proud of. This place is built on hard work, toughness, blue-collar mentality, and that is what this team has. That's what we're going to display. We're going to play with a relentless effort and play for one another and really have pride in that AU that's on our chest.
You know who he sounds like?
Who's that?
Like a deep-voiced, almost somewhat nasally Jimbo Fisher.
He talks fast.
He does.
But he's got the energy.
He 1,000%. He's the epitome of what a defensive coordinator is. Like if I had never known DJ Durkin, I'd be like, yeah, he coaches the defensive side of the ball. It's all over. It's intense.
Maybe that's what they need. Maybe that's a good Maybe that's a good change of pace. But no, I mean, I thought, look, and I mean, obviously he's been a head coach before, so he's done these kinds of things, but I thought he handled it well, and he went out there, and again, I think he understands what the situation is, right? Like, I think he understands he's not their first choice, right? But he's going to go out there and he's going to give these kids something to fight for and something to play for. And he's going to go and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to walk away from this and go, I did everything that I could to help this program succeed. And if that's not good enough for him to, ultimately become the next head coach, then so be it. But I definitely think DJ Durkin that's a guy that's he's going to be fired up for this opportunity, and we will see on Saturday in Nashville what this new look Auburn team looks like. A couple of other notes before we get off of the Auburn conversation. So we did find out yesterday, so DJ Durkin, he is still going to call the plays defensively, even though he is the interim head coach. He said he wanted to keep the continuity there. He said Derek Nix, the offensive coordinator, is going to call all of the plays. Heard that one before, right? But that is the plan moving forward for Auburn, is that Derek Nix is going to call all the plays. And then he also said that they haven't officially named a starting quarterback for this weekend. So it looks like Jackson Arnold, Ashton Daniels still kind of battling it out this week at practice. So that's a lot. That was a kind of information overload potentially, but that was a big day on the Plains yesterday as they kind of take that next step forward, not only in the season, but in the future of the program and trying to identify who the next head coach will be. But you also got to hear from Alabama. So coming off of the bye week, Kalen DeBoer had some things to say. And last night, the tip-off of college basketball season. I know it probably snuck up on a lot of it. It snuck up on me, I'll be honest with you. But how did Alabama and Auburn fare in their first meetings? We'll tell you that and what Kalen DeBoer had to say coming off of the bye week. That's all next on JOX. Welcome back into Morning Jocks, a jam-packed Tuesday here, unpacking a new era for Auburn football as they move on from Hugh Freeze and try to finish this season out strong, in addition to identifying that next head coach. We've got Alabama coming off of a bye week, hosting the LSU Tigers. Think about it like this. Alabama has 4 games left. Half of those games are going to be against interim coaches now, because you got LSU and Auburn.
Wow. Yeah.
So we will see if the, UCLA, UAB 1 week magic of having an interim head coach and finding a different gear. Maybe that happens for LSU. Maybe that happens for Auburn this weekend. We'll certainly have to wait and see. But we just told you what John Cohen and DJ Durkin said yesterday. So let's get to Kalen DeBoer and the offensive or the Alabama side of things there quickly. So the first off, the big note, I know a lot of you probably saw the situation over the weekend with Dre Kirkpatrick Jr. Kalen DeBoer addressed that very early on in his press conference yesterday, saying that he has been suspended indefinitely. So that is the situation with Dre Kirkpatrick Jr., somebody that had, worked himself up into some playing time as a guy that had come in as a 3-star recruit, obviously a legacy with his father, but had, according to the coaching staff, right, had done a lot of things right and earned himself some playing time, and unfortunately made a bad decision over the bye week, and now he finds himself suspended from the team indefinitely. But how about some injury updates heading into the LSU game? This is Kalen DeBoer yesterday talking about a couple of names, namely Geno Vandermark there on the offensive line. You've got Danny Lewis Jr. at tight end. And how about Quay Russaw maybe going to be ready to go sooner than we expected? This is Kalen DeBoer.
Vandermark is making good progress. Been practicing this last week, so I expect him to be ready to go. Quay has made, I think I mentioned last week, he's made good progress. That continues to be the case. Probably don't expect him to be ready to go this weekend, but he's doing a lot more than he has, and that it's very promising with the direction he's been going. And then Danny Lewis, we'll see how things go through this week. But the bye week was certainly good. He wasn't able to play, the previous week. So, I'm hopeful that he'll be ready to go, but we expect him to be on the football field practicing with us more this week than he has the previous 2.
So there you go. There's the injury update from Kalen DeBoer. How about that with Quay Russaw, though? I had been told about a week ago that the hope was he would be back for a postseason run, right? If Alabama makes the playoff, that he would be able to come back for that. But, what I just heard from Kalen DeBoer, that makes it sound like the Oklahoma game, he might be back out there on the field. So I'm sure not at 100% or, playing a full snap count or anything, but
he's an impact player. The biggest thing is just getting him out there.
Absolutely.
Getting him out there.
I was about to say, and if you can get him out there with a couple of games to go before potentially a playoff push, and then he's, kind of back to where he needs to be heading into the postseason, that's exactly what you want there. So that's a good sign from Alabama. Not a whole lot actually came out of the press conferences. You got Ryan Grubb saying some good things about the run game in the bye week. They think they've identified some areas where that can continue to get better. Kane Wommack complimentary, taking the LSU offense very seriously. And it's kind of interesting him talking about, how they game plan for a situation like this, right? Because you've got all the LSU film from this year. Then you got to go back and see what this new interim staff in the past, what kind of offenses they've run. And then on top of that, you have to go back through all of the different schemes and things that Alabama's run this year. And just, it's a lot at this point in the season, but it also, gives him more options and more variables, I guess, to kind of play around with there. So seems like everything's good, ready for the LSU game this weekend.
Right, and for it to be an LSU week, it just feels different. It really does. And I think the bye week came at a very pivotal time because of what has already happened. And you look at the month of November for Alabama, it looks a lot different than it did when we were having this discussion early on in the season of, okay, well, Oklahoma's not riding as high as they were. Now, they just knocked off Tennessee and Neyland, so that looks a little bit different. LSU has gotten rid of Brian Kelly. Who knows what to expect? Auburn's just gotten rid of Hugh Freeze, so we don't really know what to expect. It's just, if for Alabama to have had, what happened to them at Florida State and what they've done to respond and what they did leading up until the bye week with South Carolina kind of waking them up right there before the end. I'm interested to see what the month of November looks like for Alabama, because if they pick up right where they left off, man, it is going to be difficult to beat this team because they are really starting to gel well. And I mean, I know last year's mantra was lank and all that stuff, but this one feels like it's more lankish, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I will say this too. I mean, you go back the last year and a half, whatever. I guess almost 2 seasons now under Kalen DeBoer. The three best games that you've had of the Kalen DeBoer era all came after a bye week. The Georgia game last year, the Georgia game this year, and the LSU game last year. Like, those are the 3 games that you would point to and go, those are the reasons that I believe in Kalen DeBoer, and they all came off of a bye week. So, is that what you're going to get on Saturday? Or are you going to get a 2021 type game where you had a top 3 Alabama team and an LSU team that was a dumpster fire that year, and Alabama barely won 20-14 in that game, and that was a miserable 3 hours of your life if you're an Alabama fan. So can't take them for granted, but yes, in the sense of if this team is healthy, rested, and they've had time to learn. Hey, I mean, that was a lot of film that they put out there in that 5-game stretch to go back and review and figure out how to get better moving on. So again, it's not saying anything's guaranteed, but certainly looking good for Alabama heading into the weekend. All right, quickly, let's get to some college basketball, though, as we move along here on the Tuesday edition of the show. Because speaking of Alabama and Auburn and UAB, they all kicked off the regular season last night. So I know a lot of us still locked into college football, but it's good to start dipping your toes into college basketball because there are some really, really big matchups coming up here in the coming weeks. But we'll start off Alabama. They hosted North Dakota last night down there at Coleman Coliseum. Alabama, they get a big win, 91-62. After the first couple of minutes, Alabama had taken over and completely pulled away last night. And the most impressive thing, again, because it's North Dakota, you're not going to earn, any stripes in this game necessarily. But if you're Alabama, you put up 91 points at home in the season opener where you had 4 guys that are expected to play and play a lot of minutes for you all being out. So we know Jalil Bethea, the transfer, he was going to be out because he's coming back from an injury, and he's going to miss the first part of the season anyways. But Aiden Holloway, he was held out with a wrist injury. Latrell Wrightsell, he was a little dinged up. He had gotten held out. And Keaton Bristow had also been held out. And so those are 3 guys outside of Bethea that Alabama was expecting to have, and then something, I guess, at practice in the last couple of days held them out. But, yeah, a good night for Alabama. LeBaron Philon, he goes 22 points, 8 assists to lead the way for the Crimson Tide. And again, there's a lot of new faces on the team, so it's good to see them out there. They've got some good length to them. They out-rebounded. They dominated North Dakota on the glasses, 46 rebounds to 26. And you can see that with some of the size of guys like Noah Williamson they got out of the portal to replace, like a Cliff Amore type, things like that. So a good start to the season for Alabama nonetheless, and a good warm-up game because it's going to get very difficult very quickly now for Alabama basketball. If you weren't familiar, these are the next 4 games for Alabama basketball. So this Saturday at 11 a.m., they're going to be taking on a top 5 St. John's team in Madison Square Garden. Then after that, they're going to play the number 1 team in the country in Purdue. They're then going to take on number 17 Illinois and number 21 Gonzaga. So 4 straight games now against ranked opponents. Sounds like the football team. Don't think they're going to go 4-0 in those games. 2-2 would be really, I think you'd be really happy with that.
But it's a great measuring stick early on. Like, you're coming out of the gate.
Nate Oates loves to do this.
Right.
And it pays off.
Exactly. So I think that if we, and again, even last night watching LeBaron Philon, last season, he really came on late. Like, it was later on. He had moments, but it's like, okay, this freshman is starting to realize, okay, he's starting to figure out what he is. And I think coming back for another year, when his NBA stock wasn't necessarily high, but what you saw last night was, okay, if he got to run the point, if he has to run the show, he can do that. I mean, having 8 assists, and granted, North Dakota's not an elite program, but you saw different phases of how he can impact a game. So I think for him, individually, and again, the pieces that he has around him, they're going to continue to get better, but they're going to be tested early. But I don't think he's one that fears anything that's in front of him. Like he has a Mark Sears mindset, but a different skill. Like he's very skilled in what he does, and I think he's starting to show that. And you can tell that Nate Oates has complete faith in him, and a lot of guys that you expect to play and have some significant minutes didn't even play last night, but yet he took the grunt of it and was like, "Hey, I got you. Let's go out here and ball."
Yeah, and maybe some of the freshmen that wouldn't have gotten as many minutes normally got those last night, and that's certainly something that'll help out in the long run as well. So good win for Alabama to start things off in the new basketball season. But how about Auburn? They were playing with fire last night as they welcomed Bethune-Cookman down to the plains of Auburn. And this, I mean, honestly, it was a fantastic basketball game in terms of it was back and forth for the vast majority of the game. So Auburn, they're only up 38-37 at halftime. Free throw shooting was not great for Auburn last night. Now, they got plenty of attempts. They had almost 30 more free throw attempts than Bethune-Cookman did, but only able to shoot 71% from the charity stripe last night. And the three-point shooting wasn't great for Auburn, but it was for Bethune-Cookman. They went over 50% from three last night, and that's a large part of why that game last night went into overtime there to start off the season. Stephen Pearl's first regular season game as the head coach. Auburn fouled Bethune-Cookman on a half-court buzzer beater with like half a second left. In regulation, guy goes to the free throw line. Bethune-Cookman hit their free throws. They went 8 of 9 at the line. So he nails all 3 of them, sends the game to overtime. And then fortunately for Auburn, they're able to kind of take control there in the final couple minutes. You could tell it, right? It was a Bethune-Cookman team. They had never, so going into last night, not only had they never beaten a ranked opponent ever, they had never played a ranked opponent and lost by less than 14 points. So they've never not gotten smoked by a ranked team. And credit to them for taking Auburn to the brink and taking it to overtime. But Auburn able to get a nice victory there under Stephen Pearl. And
a win is a win.
A win is a win. You've got obviously some things to work on, some things that need to change. But hey, you'll take that after a 1-0 start. But yeah, that was a little scary last night if you're an Auburn fan.
Yeah, shot selection is different. And I don't know.
They were forcing some threes at times.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's where I'm like, okay, you're not going to play. Obviously, you're not going to play like this the rest of the way. Like, there are some shots on the floor. You just don't do it. You get an offensive rebound, which is great. But sometimes you may want to attack a little bit more. And, like, you had size on them. And in certain situations, you had more athleticism than them.
Mm-hmm.
But for that to be a game in which it never really felt comfortable at any point, there's some things that Auburn needs to work on. But it's not something that, we need to immediately fix this. It's, okay, how about we swing it one more time instead of settling for certain threes? That's kind of where.
It's things you can go and watch the film and correct.
Yeah, and a couple more games, couple more reps, you're going to figure it all out. But it was definitely there was a lot more sweat than you probably wanted to have to officially open the season.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. But the good news is your transfer star that you were expecting to be a big-time player for you this year, he was last night. Keyshawn Hall came over from UCF, 28 points. He goes 16 of 18 from the free throw line for Auburn, 5 rebounds as well to lead all scores. So that was certainly a bright spot for the Tigers last night as he had an absolute monster game. And the good news for Auburn, right, is your next game is not against St. John's like Alabama. You're playing Merrimack, so you still got some time to kind of iron out some of these early, knock off some of the early season rust, if you will. And then finally, UAB, they get a big win last night over Mississippi Valley State. Chance Westry and Jacob Meyer both go over 20 points for the UAB Blazers, and they find a nice way to start off their season with a big win over Mississippi Valley State, which, yes, that is a school. But UAB, they go 106-55, so a 51-point win to start the season. You will certainly take that. So a good way to open up the college basketball season. But now we go right back to college football, Damian, because tonight is the unveiling of the first college football playoff rankings. And there's one thing in particular that we need to see from the committee tonight. But will they do it? That is the ultimate question. I'll tell you what it is next on Morning JOX. Welcome back into Morning Jocks here on your Tuesday morning. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell with you. Recapping a lot from yesterday as we had the beginning of a new era for Auburn football as John Cohen and DJ Durkin had their joint press conference. Not only looking ahead to Vanderbilt, but John Cohen addressing the media about the coaching search and the direction he wants to take the Auburn football program. Got Kalen DeBoer, got to hear from Alabama as they get ready for game week, coming off a bye last week. Didn't have a whole lot going on down there in Tuscaloosa. And SEC basketball kicking off last night. So Alabama and Auburn both victorious, UAB victorious as well. Auburn in an overtime thriller against Bethune-Cookman. Alabama taking down North Dakota. Let's see, you had Florida and Arizona. That was a great game. Arizona getting the better end of Florida last night as the Gators try to defend their national championship. So a lot of good stuff going on. Buckyball off to a good start, and Aggie land, from what I hear, Damian.
Congratulations.
Taking on the dominant Northwestern State squad.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of good things about them.
Have you?
They're going to be their contender in whatever made-up conference they're in.
Sounds about right.
That's what I heard. So, yeah, a good start to the season there for SEC basketball. But tonight, we have the debut of something as well, and that is the college football playoff rankings. Of course, GMAC going to be there on the broadcast tonight. And there's a lot going into this. And I told you before the break, right? There's one thing in particular that I personally need to learn from the committee tonight. And we kind of talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show with just how different will the playoff rankings look from the AP poll and the coaches poll. And there were two things, if you haven't looked at the polls yet, there's two things that really stood out to me this past Sunday. And Damian mentioned it earlier when you had Miami lose their second game. They lost to SMU over the weekend. And then you also have a situation with Texas and Oklahoma right now. And so this is what I'm most curious to see about tonight, Damian. And that is, how important is head-to-head in the committee's eyes? Because you have two instances right now in the AP and the coaches poll where you have two teams that have played each other, and the team that won that head-to-head matchup is ranked below the other team, and they have identical records. And so what I'm talking about there is you have Notre Dame and Miami, right? Miami beat Notre Dame the first game of the season. Notre Dame in the AP poll is currently 10th, and Miami is 18th. Similarly, for Texas and Oklahoma, Texas honestly kind of beat the crap out of Oklahoma not that long ago. It wasn't even a month ago. And they are ranked 13th, where Oklahoma is ranked 11th. So two situations there where you have teams that have the same record and have played head-to-head, but the team that won the head-to-head matchup is ranked lower in both of those situations. That makes absolutely zero sense to me. Now, I will say this. I think the Miami one makes a little more sense because if you want to make the argument of, well, Notre Dame lost their first two games of the season and they haven't lost since then, I think you could potentially make the argument for, well, that's a drastically different team than the one we saw at the beginning of the year, whereas Miami is a team that we've seen regress over the course of the season. So you can make the argument that they're trending in different directions, and that's why the head-to-head doesn't matter as much. But Oklahoma and Texas, I mean, okay, Texas has lost to the number one team in the country, and Florida, which, okay, maybe not a great loss, but I mean, Florida's not the worst loss you could have on your resume. And for Oklahoma, I mean, I understand, okay, you've lost to Texas. Like, you don't have as bad of a loss as the Florida one. You lost to Texas and Ole Miss, but I don't understand in that scenario how you can't have Texas ranked ahead of Oklahoma when we just saw them beat them by 17 points 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. And that's the kicker. It's not all losses are created equal, essentially. Because of who Texas lost to in Florida, it's such a gut punch, and you make rash decisions as far as, okay, how far do we really expect them to drop? Where in Oklahoma's case, yeah, you lost to Texas and you lost to Ole Miss, two teams at that time. Well, I say Texas at that time, but
Texas wasn't ranked when they beat Oklahoma,
right?
So.
And John Mateer coming back from injury. I don't know where.
I understand the John Mateer part.
Yeah, like I don't know where you kind of place it all because, to your point, we've seen the Texas-Oklahoma matchup. Texas laid belt to ass to Oklahoma. Like, there's no way around it.
Well, and if they had won by, let's say Texas won on a walk-off field goal, I think you have more of a conversation. Yeah, they beat them by 17. Like,
Right.
It wasn't close. And I think we would all agree that Texas is the best that Texas has looked is right now.
Yes.
I would not say the same about Oklahoma. And we have the head-to-head that goes, I'm just saying, I feel like a lot of it leans in Texas's favor right now, like it or not.
Right.
That's where I just don't understand why so many people voted the way that they did.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just a problem that I have with the AP poll, and the committee tonight will correct that. I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows? Because I'm with you.
What about Notre Dame and Miami? Do you feel like that one, do you have a problem with Notre Dame being ranked higher than Miami, and in this case, like significantly higher than Miami?
No, I think the question with Miami is, how bad. I don't think they deserve to have dropped 8 spots after a loss to an SMU team that's pretty good. Now, the Louisville loss kind of still hangs over you a little bit because of how you lost the game. But for Notre Dame, it's kind of similar to Alabama. It's, after those 2 losses, they've handled business the rest of the way. Now, quality of competition, it's tit for tat. But they can't – I say they can't control that. But all they've done is answer the bell since those opening 2 losses. Now, I don't know. I really don't, because you look at the loss to Texas A&M, who is a top 5 team in the nation, and they took them to the wire. Do you necessarily, quote unquote, punish them for that kind of loss? Or does it look, I guess the loss starts to look worse as Miami starts to lose a couple games. But again, it was the first game of the season. So they're kind of just in that influx, because Greg actually talked about this a couple weeks ago, and he made the statement that Notre Dame's going to find themselves back into the college football playoff conversation, and we all were kind of dumbfounded of why would you think that? He's like, look at the rest of their schedule, and now you see him in this position of, well, since those 2 losses, they've handled their business and they've gone about it in a quite dominant fashion outside of, again, the first game of the season. And again, Texas A&M at that time were still kind of had some question marks, but since that win, they've done what they've needed to do. So it's you got to be, if you're going to lose, you better lose early, because now, especially in the month of November, because the losses are going to mean so much more, you kind of have to find yourself in a good footing, I guess you would say, if you've had a loss up until this point.
Well, I was about to say, it kind of feels like you have more wiggle room, but it's kind of like how it was with the BCS and the 14 playoff, right? Where you could lose, the first month of the season and have enough time to build yourself back up into the conversation and climb back up to the rankings. But, when you had, I go back to like Oklahoma State, in 2011, right, when they missed out on the national championship game. Like, it's because they lost like the last week of the season, right? And you don't have time to make that back up. And that allows, an Alabama LSU rematch that we all remember, things like that. So, maybe it's not fair, but that's just kind of the way that it's always been. And that seems to be the way that it still is. So going to be very interesting tonight just to see how this all plays out. And, I think there's just certain teams that are going to be interesting, right? Do you have Ohio State or Indiana 1? Because I think Indiana has a better resume this year, but Ohio State's the undefeated defending national champion. So you can't go wrong either way, but just kind of interesting to get the mindset of the committee. And we will, of course, have all that reaction for you tomorrow, and hopefully some hilarious audio of them trying to rationalize why they put teams where they are, because that's always my favorite part of the show each and every week. But we want to hear from you as well. A lot of you chiming in with your thoughts on basketball, the college football playoff rankings, Auburn, and John Cohen's press conference from yesterday. So a lot to get to, a lot to hear from you from 205-834-9450 on the Courtesy GMC text line. That's where we'll go next here on JOX. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you for Morning Jocks. A few more moments before we hand you off to McElroy and Kublick in the morning. But we, as always, appreciate you making us a part of your morning each and every day here on JOX. And let's go to the Courtesy GMC text line to put a bow on today's program, 205-834-9450, where you can chime in on a variety of topics that we have gotten into during today's show. Like this text that rolls in, it says, the Auburn coaching search is easy. If you can't get John Summerall or Rhett Lashley, then it's DJ Durkin.
Well, you're definitely not getting Rhett Lashley.
Yeah, I don't think that one's happening.
No.
I guess it depends on how dry that ink is, but yeah, he just if you missed it, Rhett Lashley, he signed a new extension at SMU, and then he proceeded to go out there and beat Miami. So not a bad weekend for Rhett Lashley. Let's see, Fanboy chimes in. He says Notre Dame is still in there, but not having a conference championship game is what's going to keep them out. A runner-up champion will hurt them. Maybe so.
See, I thought that last year, and yet they still found themselves in.
See, now, and that's the thing is it's like last year, okay, so you lose to Northern Illinois out of nowhere, but you only had one loss. So, right, so you still got in. But this year you have two losses. It's like, man, if one of the losses this year was to Northern Illinois, maybe that's the perfect combination you need to keep them out. But, yeah, unless Notre Dame loses in the next month, they're going to get in. Let's just be honest. They're going to get in. A few of you chiming in this morning asking where Bama Hater is or how he's doing. Haven't heard from him. He had a big weekend, though, from what I understand. So maybe we'll hear from him later on today on one of the other shows. Joseph chimes in. He says, I think we know what the top 5 will be for the rankings tonight. Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Georgia. I agree. I think that will certainly be the top 5. He says the AP poll doesn't matter at this point. It's just the playoff rankings going forward. Yeah, but it's nice to have numbers next to names, and it gives people something to do in the media until we get to this point of the season. But, yeah, no, I think that top 5 is pretty secure. It's just a question of what exact order. But I would think, for me personally, I think the top 4 will be, I think they will go Indiana 1, Ohio State 2, Texas A&M 3, and Alabama 4. Me personally, I think they will have to. Indiana has a better win than Ohio State does, and they've been more dominant against similar opponents, like the same teams as Ohio State. So I think they'll get the nod at number 1, but who knows? Let's see. This one says Gundy, Clark, or I don't know if you're saying Clark Lee, Bill Clark, whoever that is, but Mike Gundy or John Summerall to Auburn would be interesting. What do y'all think?
It'd be hilarious if Mike Gundy got to Auburn.
I want Mike Gundy to go to Arkansas.
Oh,
does that not just seem like that?
That does seem like a fit, though. Now that you said it out loud.
I mean, it
does.
It goes together.
And to follow up just what you had with Sam Pittman.
Yeah.
It'd be entertaining.
Well, this one might take the cake. What if Auburn took a shot at going after Mike McDaniel?
Lord have mercy. You know, those press conferences.
Credit to whoever thought of that, because I never in a million years did my mind even go that direction.
No.
I think
that would be.
Well, he's stuck at the Dolphins until the end of the year at least, so you got to wait some time. If
those press conferences would be hilarious.
Well,
my quarterback is
doing
studying
vape tricks on the sideline.
Yeah, my quarterback is studying for a psychology exam and missing time in meetings, so that doesn't help.
That's something. And then Pappy John, he says, my interpretation of John Cohen's press conference, Jimmy Sexton hasn't told me which coach I'm going to get yet.
Wow.
That man does run a lot of things, doesn't he? We're back tomorrow at 6 a.m. Mac and Cube is next.